Hello and welcome back to another episode of the LocalThrones podcast. I am your host, Ryan Smith, and today I am joined by the Alphabet Brewing Company. I have Alex and Andrew here with me. Hello, gentlemen.
Hi.
Right, so I am so excited to be here. I've got to be honest, because I am something of a beer connoisseur, and I say that when I'm like watching footy down the pub or something like that. So let's get to know you first, Alex, like how you came to be here and, you know, your past uni, school, whatever, how you got here, basically.
Well, I sort of originally went to university thinking I was going to be a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 6 weeks into uni, realised that I didn't want to spend sort of the next 7 years in education and that it wasn't quite for me. So I sort of stuck it out for another 18 months, as similarly did, but I dropped out of uni, got myself a job to keep me going, to pay some bills, but I was really quite unsure as to what I wanted to do. I always had a real passion for science. Always done a lot of creative stuff when I was younger as well, so I used to do amateur dramatics when I was a teenager and lots of stuff.
All for that, mate. You're talking, preaching to the choir here.
So I always really liked science, and I really liked being creative, and I didn't really know whether I could have a career that sort of satiated both those needs. And then I watched a documentary called Beer Wars, which is probably about 15 years old now.
Rings a bell.
And it was basically about small craft breweries in the States and how they sort of fought against the big boys. And I watched this video, and it was inspired by some of the brewers in there. Sam Calagione, who runs Dogfish Head, a really quite large craft brewery in the States now. Just his words really spoke to me, and I was like, I want to do what this man does.
Yeah.
So
that's sick.
I immediately bought his book, read his book, and I was like, I definitely want to do what this one does. So I started just absorbing as much information I could find online, bought every beer book under the sun, and just started teaching myself how to brew. So yeah, I basically tried to teach myself to brew, did some home brewing.
How did that go?
Well, varying. Sometimes it was really good, sometimes it was really bad, and it took a long time to work out why it was good and why it was bad, but sort of tried to use my science brain and try and control variables, and soon started putting out some pretty decent homebrew.
Nice. Was you giving it to like family to taste?
Yeah, giving it to family and friends, and it was I probably at the time still when craft beer in the UK was still quite niche.
Right.
So I was trying to make styles that I could only really get in a few bars and bottle shops and stuff like that. The hobby of beer, especially if craft beer, wasn't. It was niche. It wasn't as ubiquitous as it is now. It's weird to think now when you look around and you see sort of so many bars selling interesting diverse styles and things like a saison, which we'd never see that. You might see that in one bar in Manchester.
I've never
9 years
heard
ago.
of that. Was it a saison?
A saison, yeah. So it's a Belgian style beer.
Right.
It translates to session. Doesn't it? Oh, it translates to season. It was a style of beer that was brewed for farmers to drink once they tended to the crops, and it's pretty delicious.
Is it? Nice.
But we need to do some. We're doing one soon, aren't we?
We're doing a Belgian pale ale, which is similar thing.
Similar sort of thing.
Kind of use specific Belgian yeast that produce kind of weird straw-like and kind of peppery and spicy flavours that you don't really get in like a English ale or a lager.
So I'm drinking just to wet the whistle here. So how would you describe this?
So this is we've branded it as a Köln style beer. The actual style name is Kolsch, but Kolsch, like champagne, is a designation of provenance. So Kolsches are all brewed within 30 kilometers of Cologne in Germany. So they are sort of an ale lager hybrid. You use lager malts. You use German noble hops, which are sort of traditional in lagers. You lager the beer, but the yeast is actually an ale strain. So it's kind of a hybrid between the two. You get like lagers you would ferment at 12 degrees usually, ales sort of 20-ish. This we fermented at sort of 16.5 as well. Right. It means it's really nice and clean. It means that you can make a Kolsch in sort of 6 weeks, whereas a lager might take 8 or 9, and conventional ales take 2.5 to 3 usually. So it's a nice fine balance between making something that's nice and lagery, Cuts down your tank time, it means you can put another beer in the tank as well. This was sort of inspired by a trip to Cologne that I went to last January. So I've always liked the style, but I'd never obviously been to Cologne before, and went with a friend. We tried a healthy amount of Kolsch's over the space of 4 days, and then I came back, and all I was banging on about to everyone else was, we need to make one.
Well, it's to me on the bar, really.
Yeah, exactly. So we kept banging on about it, and then eventually we got around to brewing one. We brewed the first batch of Just What the Whistle maybe the end of last year, and released it.
Yeah, that sounds
End of last year, maybe the start of this year. This is the second batch now. We've sort of dialed it in. The first recipe of that was a sort of collaboration between me and Andrew. We looked at how we're really proud of it as it was, and but there were still some things we wanted to tweak and change. We weren't quite happy with what we got from the yeast, and we weren't quite happy with just some small tweaks that we knew we sort of got the beer to where exactly, sort of roughly where we wanted it to be, but it needed to just be refined. So
and we kind of took it a little bit away from the German towards the kind of Czech tradition of brewing beer. So like your kind of original pilsners, which are a little bit more malty, a little bit less kind of dry, and they have SARS, which is a very specific Czech hop, which is I don't know, has a very specific flavour profile, and it just kind of taking like German brewing tradition and then applying kind of Central European ingredients to it to get something somewhere in between the two. It's just a little bit more malty and slightly different balance to make it a bit unique.
Yeah, hence we haven't wrote Czech inspired cold style. Maybe we should just write lager on it next time.
Sound better.
That's amazing. So you went from kind of in a way dropping out of university for a science degree, and then going straight into watching a documentary about beer, and then doing your own beer, and then kind of coming into, was this your first job in beer?
No. So I've worked in I've worked in beer for sort of 6 or 7 years in maybe 6 or 7 different places. But I sort of say I'm the jack of all trades in the brewery, where I've done that sort of many different jobs in beer. I've worked in sales and marketing. I've worked in brewing beer. I've worked in beer restaurants. I've worked in beer bars. I've worked
nice.
So I've sort of done a little bit of everything, and now that's sort of led to me the last 2.5, 3 years here doing a little bit of everything in the company, which is nice in a small company. But I originally, after watching this and learning to brew, and with the industry sort of really quite young in the UK, I didn't really know what route there was to making this my career. I sort of think the only job in the brewery is a brewer. So I which is probably now maybe less than 20% of my actual day job. But I saw a job go for a local brewery, a brewing job, applied for that, managed to get in there, moved on pretty quickly because they were unsavoury bunch of people. I won't mention who they were, but sort of moved around, and then sort of over the last 7 years I've sort of amassed a varied sort of set of skills, which leads me to here.
Right.
And
what a journey, because I think so many people have been through that kind of journey. Like, some people have dropped out of university and kind of stumbled across a new career, and they've absolutely loved it. So I think it reaches out to so many people. Andrew, moving on to you, same sort of question. How did you come into all of this?
It's sort of the same kind of answer as well. I was at uni studying physics, and it didn't really agree with me in the end. A bit difficult somehow. So I was dropped out of uni, but I was still living in Manchester with a load of people who were in uni, and I had nothing to do. I was kind of living off my parents, which isn't the best thing. So we've
all been there.
I was like, I should try and be at least somewhat productive. So I walked up to a brewery called LocalThrones Brewing Company, who were based at number 69 on this road, so 500 yards away. And just walked in one day. Well, I think I sent them a Twitter direct message like, "Hey, can I come and brew some beer?" And then walked in and went, "Hello, could I brew beer for free?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure, for free, great."
I wish I'd done this, because I've spent 2 years thinking maybe I should do this.
It's like he kind of went in straight with the the theory, whereas I had none of it, and I knew nothing about beer at all. I just drank maybe like 5 craft beers with my brother on a pub crawl in 2014. 3 years later, turned up in a brewery and kind of went, can I brew some beer? And I was working there for about a year, I think, just like, on a part-time voluntary basis, just going in, learning as much as I could. And the 2 brewers who were there, called Will and James, who work at Track and Squawk, they're really good brewers. So I think I learned from really good people. And
one of my jobs was briefly working with them. But,
that's how we met, actually. Because
I
was doing sales at Chorlton for a while. But
and then you both jumped ship over to...
Well, I worked in Cafe Beer Moth in town.
Yes,
for,
I do know that, yes.
Again, about a year. So that was on top of the Chorlton stuff, which is where I learned probably a lot more about tasting beer, because they have such a wide variety. You get to try a lot of beers. You go in and start of a shift, be like, I have to taste all of these so I can explain them to the customers.
What a terrible job that sounds.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not the idea. It's like 15 shots at the start of a shift. Like
terrible hungover, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
do you have to cleanse your palate after every shot? Or?
I mean, it depends what you're doing. Like, for just trying to explain to someone, what does this beer taste like? I just needed to know, is it bitter? Is it sweet? Is it pale ale? That kind of thing. Like, I'd know the styles. I just wanted a slightly better idea, and I'd only taken a sip. So, you might do 3 at a time for over an hour and just get to know the beers, so that you can kind of sell them a bit better to customers. And Beer Moth's very kind of customer service focused. They want you to take what the customer wants and give them the right beer for that situation.
Yeah.
But I was working there for a year, learned a lot about tasting beer, and then ended up moving here as a barman and actually working paid in Chorlton. So I was kind of working 2 jobs, and then did that for, 6 months, something like that.
Yeah, I would say so.
February and then November last year moved here full time as a part-time brewer, part-time barman. And then at the start of COVID, obviously because we were locked down, we didn't have the bar, so I just ended up working full time in the brewery.
Right.
So pretty.
You mentioned beer tasting there. I went on a beer tasting tour in Berlin, and I'm going to absolutely butcher this. I've tried to remember it, but he said you breathe in first, and then let the beer sink onto your tongue, and then open your mouth a little bit for the oxygen to come in. Hold it for a few seconds, swallow, and then exhale through your nose. Is that right?
Yeah. So that's that's retronasal breathing,
right?
Which we sort of teach people to taste beer and analyze beer by first step is aroma. So you want to swirl a beer around in your glass. Funnily enough, these glasses aren't perfect for a you want to swirl it around, get your nose in, get the aroma. Then you want to take a sip. You want to sort of let it go in your mouth, and then when you swallow, you'll get the flavour of the beer, but you won't get the full flavour of the beer until you swallow it, because the bitterness receptors in the around the back of the tongue. So you can't. There's a reason why you can't spit out beer in beer tastings, and you can spit out wine in wine tastings. Right. Oh, what a shame. But then you want to basically, when you swallow, you want to breathe out of your nose, and that's referred to as retronasal breathing. You actually get a lot more of the aroma, because basically the beer is warmed up in your mouth, and so a lot of those flavours have come through more.
I see.
But you can taste the flavour of beer much more when it's warm, but it soon stops if you have a warm. Nobody wants to drink warm beer. I'm not advocating.
No. So should we do that? Should we? Let's give it a swirl as best you can. No, I heard is it the free sniff thing? He did that on ours, to cover it up. Is that a thing, or is that?
I mean, it could be a thing.
I can see why you've done it.
It's
just try and trap a bit.
He lied to me.
Coffee tasters with a little spoon.
Yeah, that's true.
Just to get oxygen in there.
So you breathe in first. Is that right?
No, you breathe in.
So just give it a sniff, kind of get to know the beer, in a sense. Quite a sensual experience, I said.
There's just so much pretense when it comes to doing anything like this. Drink your lager, enjoy it.
Drink it down, see if it's like it or not. Yeah, that's the easiest way.
Mentioned sensual, and I had some liquid in my mouth.
But yeah, definitely give it a sniff. Take a little sip, let it kind of coat your palate, and then swallow, breathe out through your nose. Should get a fairly good idea of how it tastes.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we did it, we had a bit of paper and stuff, and we'd write down if it was citrusy or coffee, and so I mean, you must work with absolutely everything in order to like find ingredients or something like that. I wouldn't even know how to describe it. But so do you guys make your own? Like, you obviously make your own beer, but like, how do you come to that process?
Like in terms of how we
so if you was to think of one tomorrow, how does that work?
So basically, we usually sort of schedule a few months in advance. We sort of plan, right, we're gonna sort of fill out a month. So maybe we'll be looking at, so like we've just been discussing sort of December, January recently, and we know sort of roughly what brewing slots we've got in there. How many beers we're going to be able to produce in a set number of time, how many of those slots can be filled with the core range that we have, and so how many slots we have for new beers. Mm-hmm. So we'll sort of discuss those and go, what haven't we done for a while? Do we want to bring back an old recipe, or do we want to maybe do a new iteration of a different style? So it might come to a decision that we're going to brew a new IPA. Mm. So what we'll do then, somebody will be assigned that. We'll go, who wants to brew the beer, or who wants to write the recipe for the beer. And so say that's then Andrew will go away, probably look at various books, and also look at all the IPAs that we've brewed before in the past, look at what the lessons we've learned from those, and then also look at what things he wants to implement as well. So there's it's a constant learning process. We're constantly having to read stuff, and there's a lot of there's always constant reading, isn't there? As well.
I think we're trying to learn new things from each kind of special as well. So because the core range we don't want to change too much. Yeah. So the specials are more where we can experiment and kind of try different processes, like dry hopping temperature, for instance. We've been doing a lot of that kind of thing recently, and so that means that when we're doing specials, we try and think, what can we learn from doing this style of beer, and how can we learn it, and what little variables can we change from last time, or that kind of thing, like whether it's ingredients or process changes, and we try and isolate things so that we can just change a few things so that we can actually learn lessons from those changes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, there's like a golden rule, which is whatever we brew, so every time we brew, whether it's a beer we've brewed 100 times before, or if it's a brand new beer, it has to push the brewery forwards. There has to be a lesson to be learned. So whether it's a small tweaking a variable, or tweaking a process, or whether it's doing something drastic in a special that's gonna, because sometimes doing really radical things in a one-off batch can help make our beers, the beers that we've brewed 100 times already before, better. And that's happened plenty of times with the IPAs we've brewed this year have made our core session IPA, Charlie Don't Surf, infinitely better as well.
Right. So what have you done? Like, what radical things have you done to then make something better? What would be an example?
Probably a process change with hops.
Yeah, definitely the dry hopping is what we've been doing a lot of this year. So we were.
So what does that? Sorry, what does that mean?
I was going to say, when you mentioned dry hopping 2 seconds ago.
Dry hopping is kind of it's when you're adding hops post fermentation to cold beer, essentially, or to beer that isn't fermenting anymore. So you've got kettle additions, which are when you're making the beer in the first instance. So the first day you're making it, you boil hops in the kettle. Okay. And then you'll in the wort, which is what we call the sugary liquid you ferment into beer. So it gets very technical very quickly.
But yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so that's kettle hopping, and then you have aroma hopping, which you cool that wort down just after it's been boiled, and then add hops at sort of 80 degrees, and that gives you like aroma and slight flavour, but not as much as dry hopping. So dry hopping is after fermentation, you're just adding little pellets of hops to the fermenter, and that dissolves all of the hop oils into the beer, and that's where you get kind of like IPA, kind of fruity, tropical flavours. That all comes from dry hopping, and that's kind of all done cooler, like say 80 degrees versus 20 or 15 degrees.
I see.
And so what we've been doing this year is dry hopping at different temperatures. So we were dry hopping kind of at 20 degrees, and now we've reduced it right down to 14.
So how do you come across like dry hopping? Is it something that's always been there, or is it something you just went, should we try this and see what happens?
Well, it's weird because it was always done in quite traditional brewing with English hops, for centuries. But the way that we dry hop and the beers that we dry hop is heavily influenced by the last 30 years of American brewing tradition, really. So we're like dry hopping into a tank and using, well, the amount we use as well is drastically different. There's a huge increase in the last few years of just how much hops go into beer as well. So we measure like the dry hopping rate in grams of hops per litre of beer. So we talk about grams per litre quite a lot. And there was almost an arms race at some point, wasn't there?
Yeah. Probably 3 years ago, with Cloudwater putting like 30 grams a litre in, or American.
Well, that's a really good example as well, because when Cloudwater, so we're another local brewery, they opened up, I think roughly just after Alphabet did, so maybe 5.5 years ago. I remember seeing one of their recipes, and they talked about like really hoppy beer being 9 grams per litre, and then like that was a double IPA, and then I think the revamped version of that recipe had maybe 2.5 times that level. Yeah. Most of our beers are somewhere between 10 and 15 grams per litre, which is a good amount. I mean, this is 0 grams per litre because we didn't dry up this beer, because this is not a beer to to hit you with a amount of tropical aroma. This has got a really nice bready character to it.
It's a lot maltier. Well, we call it either like hop forward or malt forward, or like yeast forward for kind of a Belgian beer.
Right.
But it's this is more malt forward, whereas an IPA you'd call hop forward, and like definitely a lot of the flavour of kind of IPAs is hops. So and that's mostly dry hop flavour, because this still has the hot side, the kettle additions, but doesn't have any of the post-fermentation hop additions.
I see. There's a lot of big words throwing at me here today.
We've not even started talking about water chemistry.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, the golden rule of brewing is the more boring the ingredient, the more important it is.
Yeah.
But we won't talk about water today, if you don't want to talk about water. Because I do own a book called Water, it's not a thrilling read. It's certainly not a page turner.
Oh wow, I kind of want to borrow that.
Do you know what?
Give it a go.
Yeast, absolute thrill ride.
Yeah. Yeast is.
Yeast is actually really good, isn't it? Yeast is really good.
Will it put me to sleep? Shall I read it before bed?
Water, yeah, I think
definitely.
It's a good read at night time. So you mentioned your core beers there. So what are the 4? I believe it's 4 core beers. Is that right?
4, yeah.
Okay.
So we have Charlie Don't Surf, as I mentioned, a nice 4% session IPA. And then we have Juice Springsteen. So Juice Springsteen is a
amazing,
great pun name. Not mine, unfortunately. Can't take credit for the pun names. I'm sort of the orchestrator of a lot of the beer names recently. But I've been trying to veer away a little bit from puns, just because we've got such a strong pun name with Juice Springsteen.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
There's no point trying to climb over this twice. But Juice Springsteen is another session IPA. We brand it as a tropical IPA because we put mango, pineapple, guava and passion fruits into the beer near the end of fermentation. So instead of dry hopping that beer, we add that fruit. And basically the sugars will ferment away, but you still get really nice strong fruity flavour with that beer.
Nice. And
then we've got A to the K, which I have here.
A to the K.
So this is Cypress Hill reference.
So I've never seen that. Is that a film?
Cypress Hill?
Yeah, I've not seen it. I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
band.
Okay, fair enough. So, I'm so hip and with the kids.
Yeah, they're a hip hop band, mate. So it's a 5.6% American Pale Ale. This is it's got plenty of oats in it as well. Just gives it a really nice silky mouthfeel. Just really easy to drink. But this is dry hopped, mainly with Hopwood Mosaic. I'm getting nice action shots of it.
So while you're talking about it, we can do this.
So so this sort of Mosaic, which is a really popular hop. The taste is really tropical in itself. Loads of pineapple and what sort of notes do you get from Mosaic?
Stone fruit.
A
little bit of armpit, but in a nice way.
I would go with onion a little bit.
A little bit of onion.
Mainly more tropical. We're really underselling our
definitely kind of this is Mosaic. This is an A to the K. No, it's kind of tropical fruit and stone fruit, so like your kind of plums and apricots and that kind of thing is like a base note. But yeah, it's the unique hops are all that they taste strange. So like a lot of people when they drink a kind of Mosaic Triumph beer the first time, they're like, I don't know what I'm tasting, and it's like, it's just delicious, isn't it? Though?
Isn't it just? Isn't it just? And your
and
last one.
then we have flat white. So flat white is a white breakfast stout at 7.4%. So it's a white stout. So it's not a dark beer.
White breakfast stout. Did you?
Yeah.
say?
So
It's for breakfast.
well, the breakfast bit comes from the fact that it has loads of oats in it. It also has lactose in it, so milk sugar, which brewer's yeast can't metabolize. So basically, if you put lactose into a beer, it will stay really sweet and creamy. It won't ferment out. And then we also use cold brew coffee. So we get a copious amount of coffee from Hart and Graft, who are a local coffee roastery in Chorlton. We make a cold brew overnight. Yeah, we grind up. Is it 30 kilos per batch?
Yeah, 30 kilos.
Yeah, we grind up 30 kilos. Make a cold brew, so they steep at sort of like 5 degrees water.
Something like that. Yeah,
5 degrees water
overnight.
Overnight, maybe 24 hours. And then we add that to the fermenter prior to adding the unfermented beer. So as the wort, the unfermented beer comes in, we add that in hot at the start to basically pasteurize that coffee.
Right.
So the beer's got coffee, milk, and oats in it. That makes it breakfast.
That's a lovely.
And because we add the coffee, it smells and tastes like a dark beer, but it's pretty pale. So
nice.
Yeah, so it's a white stout effectively.
So why are these your like core four? Is it because they are just the best of the best? Or?
Well, so they all these beers have been brewed sort of since before either of us came into the company.
Right.
They've slowly sort of evolved over time as well. Like no brewery sort of sits still with their core range. You know, people talk about this is just the same as it did the first time I tried it. It's not true, is it at all? Never true.
Like uncultured swine. They don't have the palate you have.
The thing is, with a core range, you know, we make very small iterative change over time. You know, so A to the K, the brewery might have brewed this maybe 120 times in 6 years. So there's going to be sort of tweaks. You've got to keep moving the beer forwards, but we sort of try and keep the soul of a beer for less of maybe. Can't you think of a less pretentious way of saying that? Because I can't.
I think it totally works.
Keep the soul of a beer alive.
The
character of the beer. You've got to keep that alive. Like the character for us, like the character of A to the K is that it's got a high percentage of oats in it and it has loads of mosaic in it, and we can make small tweaks around, but those things are fixed. Yeah. So when we're trying to grow, change that recipe or make suggestions for how we make this beer, and improve this beer, because we can never be happy with beers either. We should never be sort of comfortable with. We've reached a point where this is right.
Yeah.
It's when I talked to them about how the industry was new, and it was very raw early on in my career. We're now in a period of time where there's a huge amount of breweries in the UK. Some of them have been snapped up by big beer. We've seen in the last sort of 2 years, we've seen companies like the breweries like Beavertown, Magic Rock, Camden, Four Pure. These are breweries that who some of those breweries really sort of inspired me to be in beer, and sort of I was a huge fans of. They've all been bought up by big beer companies, and therefore they have the purchasing power to sort of like dominate taps and bars and stop us from being able to get into certain places, and also be able to get the same ingredients for cheaper because they're able to buy it and out. So it's a strange time to be in beer, especially. I don't know if any of us mentioned this. There's a pandemic going on, isn't there? It's quite.
Is there?
Yeah, I think so.
Rumour has it.
Yeah. So it's a weird time to be in the industry. So we can never rest on our laurels.
No, I'm not being horrible. Like this is you, right?
That
is you on there.
He's kind of nailed the likeness.
It's a spitting image, mate. It's very good.
We've got a spitting image.
Got us two on these two. So
you two on this one.
Yeah,
oh wow! Look at you go. Where's so this is just you on this one. It's not okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, who's he, the goat? Because that's look at you, mate. You're doing bits. We're going to come to this one in a second, which is just the wet the whistle, which is just two wet the whistle words. And now is that from Peep Show?
No.
It's not from Peep Show.
No, so it was just like when I was in Cologne with my friend on holiday, we tried to do something sort of cultural in the day to stop us from drinking from the moment we woke up. So we were like, we're going to the art gallery. There's a great chocolate museum in Cologne. It's a great little city break. The flights were £10 return. I was playing out as well.
Oh wow!
But
nice.
We went down there. We went there, and as we were walking back from a museum, we were like, just one little Kolsch, just to wet the whistle. They only 4
hours later.
They basically, if you can see on this label, they come in these little glasses called Stangers. Sorry, they're basically 200 mils, and you can't get a bigger one. The idea is you go and sit down in a Kolsch house. You sit down, they slap one of those in front of you. You've got a beer mat. They draw a line on it. You finish your beer, you put it down. Less than 45 seconds later, you've got yourself another one. They draw another line on the beer mat.
Oh, really?
And that just keeps going until you've had too much, where you get your beer mat, put it on top of your glass.
Oh, so
It's
like,
just
like
the
Ben
way
Brazil.
drinking should be.
Yeah, just like Ben Brazil, so the red and green. Is that right?
Yeah, but it's just all green.
Wow. God, that is a challenge, and that's in Cologne. You
That's
say?
in Cologne, yeah. So we were just like, we could sneak in another one. Just a little whistle, yeah.
But I have to talk to you about the illustration of these because it's absolutely insane. So who does all that?
So yeah, we've been working with one illustrator since we opened in 2014. That man is Hamo, or as I'm sure his family call him, Nick Hamilton.
Nice.
So yeah, Hamo's a street artist and illustrator based in Manchester. He's done loads of stuff. If you walk around the city, you'll notice his murals. You see his stuff in the Northern Quarter. He's done Fresh Bites. He's done stuff for Park Life Festival. If you go down Chester Road, sort of down to Stretford, there's loads of his artwork. It's in Withington. It's all around. There's plenty of Hamo to see around Manchester. So we've built a really good relationship with him where, Hamo is Alphabet Brewing Company as well. He's a de facto member of the staff. I mean, he never pays for beer, but we never want him to.
He does get paid for his work, though.
He does. He does have it. Yeah, we don't just
Great beer.
We do pay
It's
him.
exposure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we built up a really good relationship with Nick. It's quite good. So one of my, I talked about me sort of only really brewing sort of 20% of the time now. I'll be involved in beer for 20% of the time. One of my main things is sort of working with Nick on branding. So I'm usually putting together a brief for him, but I sort of give him a paragraph and he creates something that is so rich. I mean, this beer here, Making Pints for Nigel. So this is a beer that we brewed probably a couple of months ago now. We released a month ago, didn't we?
That,
So this has Nigel, or our Nigel, our colleague on the label. We wanted to brew a beer that he would enjoy. He's a bit more traditional in his drinking habits than we are. So we constantly play Making Plans for Nigel by XTC in the brewery, and then we just thought we'd have to. We said do a riff on that. We're going to Making Plans for Nigel, and he's just populated it with 1,000,001 famous Nigels. We've got Nigel Slater.
You got your Nigel Lawson.
We've got Nigel
Lawson. Sorry.
Nigel Tufnell from Spinal Tap. Nigel Havers. Nigel Hawthorne. Nigel Buxton,
way.
and even Nigel Thornbury from the Wild Thornburys on our Nigel's t-shirt. So, I've sent a very small brief for this one. Like, there's absolutely zero credit to me. This is Nick. This is pure Nick.
I think you said, let's have Nigel in a pub with some people around him going, oh, Nigel. And then he was like, yes, we'll have lots of famous Nigels. And then sent this huge list of Nigels that he was going to put on the can. And we were like, great, you've nailed it. He's like, honestly, we give him like a slight idea and he just runs with it straight
That's
away.
absolutely
So good.
I love how Nigel Thornbury has somehow made his way on there as well. So, are you doing any collaborations with any other companies or anything like that in the future?
Yeah, so we've done a couple of collaborations recently. Not with other breweries. That's the sort of thing that has been put on hold by coronavirus. Although we have just done one, haven't we? We've just done collab fests.
Yeah, sorry. With,
Yes.
with
Brewdog,
Brewdog,
we've just we've not done any collaborations, but we have just been part of something called Collab Fest. Sorry, so correct me. So
There's a lot going on.
yeah, so we've just brewed a beer with Brewdog. They run a event called Collab Fest every year, where every one of their bars across the UK, I think that's 40 of them now, right?
Yeah,
Because that's how many beers kegs were sent over to them.
Yeah.
So they run Collab Fest evenings. So all the bars do a collaboration with different local brewery.
Mm-hmm.
So we've paired up with the Brewdog Outpost on Oxford Road. We stood up one with a nice little sexy kit in there as well. So they've come down to us. Oh, am I not allowed to?
Sexy brew kit.
Am I not allowed to tank pour? Am I
You
not
never
allowed to?
seen stainless steel like it.
I really like.
You do you, mate. Hey, you do you. I haven't seen it.
I like brewing equipment. Right, okay. So it is nice. It's on, they put
It's
it
a
on.
nice kit.
They put it on.
It's a very nice kit.
It is, isn't it?
You know, they've got the money behind them. They've got a very nice
The point
kit.
is, they've got a nice little. They came here anyway. The point is, they came here, and we brewed a beer with them. So that's currently in our tanks right now. But then that will be packaged into 40 kegs, and that's gonna go across to all their sites in the UK, and it'll get launched on the same night with however many beers. You know, they have probably, they'll have 40 beers to choose from. So over that sort of 3-day period, they're gonna have all those collaborative beers. So that's been quite fun as well. It'll be nice to see our beer getting into those places. You know, Brewdog are a big company where they've got, you know, they've been one of those. They're really recognisable name in craft beer for people, especially for people who are just members of the public who aren't necessarily into craft beer as much as well. I think they're a really good catch-all brand. So being able to get into those places as well and be associated with that brand really helps us.
Yeah.
It increases our reach without sort of having to do anything sort of like selling out to big beer. But that's going to be really fun. Like the beer's already. We know it's going to be pretty nice as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Sounds great.
And then we've recently worked with zymologists who are a bakery in Sale.
All right.
My friend Kate runs them, and basically we used what are the Cornish boys. So we gave Kate some of the Cornish stout and the spent grain. So basically the malt after we've got use out of it, they use that and the beer to make a sourdough bread.
No way.
So it was pretty delicious.
Is it special? Have you tried it?
Yeah, she brought
Yeah,
it down
she
for us.
brought some
It
round.
was
It was really
so
delicious.
good, wasn't it?
What did you have it with? Like what? Just as it
Bread
is.
and butter.
Bread and butter. Yeah.
I don't think I even got anywhere near that. I just hammered on it.
Oh, mate, that sounds amazing. Where? That's in Salford. You
No,
said?
it's in Sale.
Oh, Sale,
So
sorry.
yeah. Zymologists. They quite often make a lot of different types of sourdough bread and sort of try and sort of stand out and do something different to other local bakeries, and you know the collaboration works perfectly because we try and do something different with what we do.
Right.
Also, another collaboration we sort of have in the pipeline is doing a
Oh, you have it here.
beer hot sauce. This isn't actually our beer hot sauce, but this is my this is Coleman's Cooking. So they're a new hot sauce company, and this is the one that I think their first commercial release. So this is run by a friend of mine, Phil. He's tried to make a few hot sauces with our beers, and they were pretty good, weren't they?
Yeah,
Special.
So yeah, we've been talking about how we're going to work and make some hot sauces with our core beers, and working how we can make sure that we can accentuate sort of beer flavour but still being a hot sauce.
So that concludes this episode of the LocalThrones podcast. Alex, Andrew, where can they find you guys?
So yeah, so Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. It's at Alphabet Brewing. Our tap room, which is open on site on Saturdays 12 till 10, is ABC Tap Room. You can go on our website alphabetbrewing.co.uk, and you can go on our web shop there. And we're offering a discount for the next 7 days. If you use the promo code ABCThrones, yes, I'm looking at you now, ABCThrones20, you get 20% off for the next 7 days. A little treat for you guys.
You lucky devils, you. If you would like to follow us, it is at LocalThrones MCR, and if you'd like to follow me, God bless you if you do, it is at ryansmith.pt. Thank you so much for listening to this. We will see you all next week.